TCS Ion Direct, your host for today's webinar on education in a boarding school. Schools leverage a significant part of an individual's life. We learn many crucial life lessons strolling through the school's corridors. In the schooling and learning culture, boarding schools in India are considered to be even more influential when it comes to an extended personality enhancement of a person. Residential schools have been instrumental in shaping some of the hugely successful citizens of the society. Today, we'll talk about house life, learning, and education in a boarding school with an aim to help you make a decision right at the right time. But first, I would like to introduce our guest today, Dr. Craig Cook, the principal of the Woodstock School, Mussoorie. Considered as one of the best boarding schools in India, especially for international students, Woodstock School is a co-education school. It lists among the oldest boarding schools in Asia. Being established in the year 1854. It operates today as a private, non-profit institution. It was also declared as an International Baccalaureate World School in 2019 for students from grade 6 to 12, and both diploma as well as middle year program. Dr. Cook has a wealth of experience in educational leadership, having worked at schools and in higher education in the USA, the Philippines, and Indonesia. He is a PhD in sociology from Ateneo de Manila University, Philippines. He currently serves as the president of the International Sociological Association's Research Committee on Sociology of the Body. We welcome you, Dr. Cook. It is a great honor to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Mudita. Very good to be with you and to be with our listeners and viewers today. We look forward to our conversation in helping us all understand the role of schools, and particularly boarding schools, in the education of whole people. And I think that's what excites those of us that are involved in the enterprise of boarding schools. And so look forward to this engagement with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll immediately dive into the questions that we have for you today. So we'll start with just understanding how a normal day looks like for a child in a boarding school, sir. Over to you.
Very good. Yes, much of it depends on what the students' interests are, and we'll talk more about that as we go along in the conversation. We do take a holistic approach. So if, for example, a student is interested in music and plays a particular instrument or is a vocalist, they may come up to school early to have lessons before the formal class day starts. Then again, if you're a cross-country runner, you may come up early to the campus and then engage in your training for the day. Once students come up, and in our case, they have a very particular walk. It takes about 20 minutes, if not a few minutes less, to get from the dormitory area to the campus. We live on a hillside here in Mussoorie, the foothills of the Himalaya, and so that always is an extra part of the education, in a sense, those long walks up long hills at the start of the day. And then, of course, the walk down the hill at the end of the day. Classes are conducted throughout the day, of course, tea break, lunch break. And then after formal classes end on a typical day, there will be enrichment activities. And so we particularly call it passages at Woodstock, where students engage in their area of interest. And these are all led by all kinds of staff members, not just teachers, but also admin staff, boarding parents, and other members of the Woodstock community. And they range from maybe a chess club to a debate club to a graphic design kind of club to creating a radio station, all kinds of things in that. Once they then complete that day, they walk down typically maybe at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., depending, back to the dorms. And there they have engagement with the dorm parents, our residence life staff, and also eat dinner, and then have some socialization, of course, with peers. We have all kinds of sporting facilities, ways for students to be outside, basketball court, we have a football pitch, we have a swimming pool, we have all kinds of things they can be engaged with. And then they go to bed at some point during that day, depending on their grade level. They turn in their cell phone devices at a certain time of night, and then they have a deadline where they have to go into their rooms and go to sleep and get ready for the next day. So that's kind of the day in the life of an average boarding student. And again, one of the things we're going to stress throughout our conversation here is the holism of that, to understand that we're complete people, not just concerned with academics.
So you know what? It's an ideal day that a parent like me would look at for the child. I mean, specifically the time that you're asking the students to switch on their mobiles and switch off their mobiles. If this can be implemented at home, it's going to be excellent.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that of course is really, I think, one of the key markers of value in helping students understand, prescribing some areas that this is just good for you to not be on that device all day long. So
true. So yeah, you've spoken about this holistic development of the kid. So where does the boarding school stand apart from the day schools in this regard?
Well, we certainly believe in academics. We believe in what I would call the life of the mind, developing one's intellect and that, but certainly that is not an end result. And of course, we live in a more and more rationalized world when it comes to education, globally speaking, right? I'm a sociologist and I study these trends. And there's certainly a hyper-rationalization towards teaching to the test, towards those test score outcomes. But certainly by no means is that an end-all for what we want to do in our education at Woodstock. And I would speak for so many other boarding schools in that same way. We believe beyond the life of the mind that we are preparing students, as our mission statement says, for leadership and for life. And so certainly if you're going to be prepared for leadership and for life, you have to know more than how to do well on a test or to take a test. So some of that comes through peer relationships, certainly. As you rub shoulders with a diverse set of peers in boarding school, you're certainly going to learn a lot. We have our residence life staff that inputs into their lives. They're the ones closest to them, living their daily lives, and they really act as the functional parents while they're on our campus. Even in this pandemic time, we've been able to utilize the strengths of our pastoral care of our parents in reaching out to students with whatever needs they have and understanding their situations at home so that we can be a support to them. I already mentioned all the enrichment activities that we share, and those all staff here are expected to engage with students in some kind of their own interest, and so it's a great way for students to make connections with their sometimes their teachers, sometimes staff members, in ways that normally would not happen in a classroom kind of setting. So they're exposed to our teachers as whole people, which I think is one of the key contributions that a boarding school staff can make to their students, because you get to see your teacher outside of the classroom and not just inside the classroom. And I think that makes for a richer kind of experience, especially when it comes to mentoring. So
Please carry on.
Learning doesn't stop once you're outside the classroom. It keeps going there.
So yes, the individual connect that the student makes with the teacher outside of the professional and the educational format, definitely, I mean, that would make a difference to understanding what an ideal person as a professor looks like and how he is in his personal life. Yeah,
absolutely.
So if you have to list top 3 advantages of sending a kid to a boarding school, what would those be?
Certainly. First, I mean, just what we're talking about, a holistic experience. I like the other word we would use is immersive, right? It's an immersive educational experience. Woodstock is a safe place for students to be able to express themselves. So we have excellent facilities that they can avail of. Again, and we have, just as we were speaking, we have staff that care deeply for who these students are as people and as whole people, not just as academics in a sense, or students that are looking to attain a particular grade. So it's that immersive experience, I think, is first and foremost. Secondly is I think boarding schools give an opportunity for students to build independence, to build confidence, to build their own voice, if you will. They are surrounded by a supportive community on all fronts, again, both in the classroom, outside the classroom, both with teaching staff, with non-teaching staff. And so in this way, I think in expressing their identity and expressing their voice, they're able to really have a sense of who they are in the world and how they're going to contribute in some significant way to the world. And I think that's certainly a hallmark from what I've seen of our students as they graduate from Woodstock. Another element, I'd say a third element, particularly in our location as a boarding school, is the whole environment. And we continue to always look for ways to leverage our environment, being in a more remote region and also in a mountainous region, such as the foothills of the Himalaya, where students can engage in their environment, and not only in community service with our local community and beyond, but also just in terms of the beautiful nature that we are surrounded by. We have things such as Activity Week, where students go out and do different service projects, also engage with the environment. We also have weekends, outdoor weekends, where students go on hikes with staff. And so I think particularly in a situation where, in the Asian context, where we have a lot of big cities and certainly access to a lot of things, but this is a bit of away from it all, and it allows, I think, for greater focus in terms of their studies and their personality development. So I think those three, the immersive aspect, building their independence, and also just taking advantage of the environment, are three strong advantages that I see to boarding schools.
So you've spoken about the advantages. What about the concerns that a lot of parents may have? I mean, you would have seen so many parents, dropping their kids to the boarding school, or maybe trying to decide whether to drop them there or not under your care. So what are a few of those concerns, if you would want to address those concerns here?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, we have a complete staff that is absolutely committed to the well-being of any parent that sends their child to Woodstock. And of course, parents know their developmental age of their child, and how they would best fit in at what certain age. Certainly in the old days, we took all ages of children, but today we only receive students from grade 6 up to grade 12. It depends on the personality and the independence of the child, and I think in a conversation between the parent and the child, they would determine when they are ready to be sent to boarding school. But I can assure you that across the board, our 150 staff members are all committed to their growth as people and their well-being. This morning, for example, we had an assembly and a devotional from one of our estates teams members. This is someone who works in our estates department, takes care of buildings, and yet is right there engaged with students in ways that are meaningful to help them understand their own identities in this context. I think the peer socialization that takes place at boarding schools is also really a helpful thing, because these children, even if they might be reticent to come to boarding school away from their parents, they quickly find a strong community that really will last with them for a lifetime. And so I think again, any boarding school, and ourselves included in that, are happy always to talk to any parents who would maybe have some doubts about sending their child away to boarding school. Again, you will find nothing but love and support for these children.
So you mentioned that you're now getting students only starting class 6 to 12. But according to you, what is the right age actually to put a child in a boarding school? As per your experience, even outside of India, or
Yeah. No, I think I personally think that grade 6 to grade 12 is the appropriate age. I think I think as you enter grade 6, typically 11 years old, you're beginning to get a sense of yourself and your identity as a young person. And I think there's an advantage in a sense of beginning a boarding school experience in 6th grade as well, because you understand the culture, you understand how things work, and you really see students blossom into leaders as they are here, for a longer time. So, I think that's very appropriate age 6 and onwards. I mean, grade 6 and onwards.
So, see, in the regular, academic schools, there is competition with respect to ranking, with respect to academic results, the marks that a student has got, even in grade 5. Forget about grade 10 and 12. So, what is the kind of competition that you have in your boarding schools? Is there any competition at all? Who do the students compete with themselves or with the other students, or what's the kind of that environment?
Sure. They certainly, like any kind of environment, they would compete with themselves. They're also engaged in cross-school competition. We have a couple of students representing us this last weekend in an inter-school debate competition with several schools. In terms of athletics, we have all kinds of athletic competition. We have a couple of key featured tournaments, both a basketball tournament and a football tournament, where students engage from schools from around India. And so we are engaged in choir competitions, for example, with other boarding schools on the hillside here in Mussoorie. And so there's all kinds of ways that they, in a sense, express their holism through these different areas, not just the academics as well. But again, we really resist the notion that it's just about a test and attaining a score. If we are going to prepare students for leadership and for life, like our mission states, we have to engage the whole person, because as we know, in the world beyond school, nobody really pays attention to that test score. It's how you treat people. Can you work well with others? Do you have a sense of yourself, and what can you contribute to the world? So
what about from the perspective of a child? What kind of challenges does a child face, apart from beginning, the teething troubles that a child may face in the beginning when he comes in? Anything specific that you want to talk about, that a child as an entrant, or as even during the settlement, he faces any challenges there with respect to how he would feel when he's being educated in a regular day school?
Right. Yeah, I think the tendency to be homesick at first can be a challenge with any kind of major shift in your way of being in the world, and certainly your level of independence is going to play into that, how ready you are. But when I talk to our younger age students, grade 6, 7, they are so self-assured and confident. I think some of that comes from being on their own early on, and they kind of exude that sense of self as a middle years student. So, for some, homesickness is there, but they quickly adapt. Children are resilient, and they quickly understand the culture. And again, these friends that they forge a relationship with in middle school go with them for the rest of their lives. I've never really been a part of a school community that had such a robust alumni association, where they are so invested in the school, and much of that has come because Woodstock became and was their home. And so they have incredibly strong feelings about the place that shaped them and crafted them. So
true. So my last question would be regarding the recent situation, the pandemic situations, the post-pandemic era. The way of teaching has changed a lot with these online classes. What are your challenges in a residential school?
Yeah, absolutely. We consider ourselves a place-based boarding school, right? You come to campus to experience the environment that is here, and it's an incredible environment. So the challenges were certainly shifting to an online mode of engagement early on, and it's a continuing evolution that has taken place. So we do things like we've trained our teachers extensively in online education, how to make a robust educational experience, even in this online format. Students are digital natives, and so they've been able to adjust to a degree. Our own concern is their social and emotional well-being, because being on the screen for a good part of the day certainly has its downsides. But we have chosen to stay focused on achieving what we can. Even in the holistic realm, we've continued to offer Passages, our enrichment program, in an online environment, right? We still have ways to move around in the physical education realm, or give asynchronous assignments for students to go off camera and to engage in their community in some way. So it's still the same program of trying to achieve holism. It's just in a new format. And so many in the community have done an excellent job in just making that pivot. For all of us, it's been difficult, and certainly not something that we would have wished on ourselves. But on the positive side, it really helps students engage in digital learning, which they are going to have to prepare for and engage with when they get to university. So in a sense, it's giving them a start in that kind of model. But we still are committed. And again, another example is our residence life staff. We don't have students in residence now, but we, of course, engage with our residence life staff in their whole beings and helping to support them in any way that we can. And this goes for our counseling department as well, for those that struggle with the weight of being online for an extensive amount of time.
So good to know that you've had challenges, but you've made your way through them. So nice. So thank you so much, Dr. Cook, for all the answers and clearing all our doubts. It was a very insightful talk that we had. We really appreciate you sparing your time out of your busy schedule and making yourself available for this. Before we leave, any closing remarks from your end on life in a boarding school, sir?
Thank you so much, Marita. I really appreciate this time together and the questions. And yeah, I think you all should look at boarding schools for your children if you want to give them that holistic educational experience. There's really nothing that can beat that, and it's going to stay with them in a positive sense for the rest of their lives, and really will prepare them to be world leaders, I feel. So thank you so much for your engagement with us.